Anyone at YouTube, and welcome back to a new video with Rams Fan YT. I hope you're having a great evening, and today we're going to be going over my score predictions for the upcoming week because I'm going to be very busy on this Friday, as in tomorrow, and the week after. So for now, and it may become a permanent change as well in the long run, doing things on a Thursday evening. Let me know. Is it a time which you prefer? We'll see. I think it works for me in the long run. So we'll give it a juggling act and we'll see. Anyway, so tomorrow night, as opposed to tonight, as we usually have, we've got Watford at home versus Bristol City. Earmarkings of a classic championship game, this one, isn't it? It's one of them ones that both of these two teams are just outside the playoffs, but there's not much between them. Bristol City at 1 point off it, Watford 3 points off it, although 12th does seem to imply or suggest slightly further off. It is under the lights. It's a Friday night game on TV. It's back-to-back losses as well for Bristol City, and Watford are unbeaten in the last two. I'm going to have to edge Watford at home here. 1-0. I don't think it'll be convincing in any way, but I can see Watford with a cheeky 1-0 win here. Tottenham Hotspur versus Man United in the early kickoff in the Premier League. I mean, this was the Europa League final last season, and it's been a replay. Man United have gathered a bit of a run. 4 games unbeaten. Up against Spurs with a bit of an indifferent run at the moment. They're both on the same amount of points. Spurs much better defensively than Man United. I think in this one it's going to be a very tight game, and I think Spurs will nick it by 1-0. Another week goes by where that guy who's not cutting his hair will be suffering. But I think he's an absolute idiot for doing it in the first place, to be honest. Just shows a bit of arrogance, in my opinion. Everton versus Fulham, 14th versus 15th. 1 point separating these two teams. They're, at the moment, not quite bad enough to be involved in a relegation scrap. They're sort of lower half mid-table teams at present. I can't really put these two teams aside. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw in this one. On to West Ham United versus Burnley. A bit of a relegation 6-pointer maybe. West Ham are 3 points outside relegation, inside relegation zone, with Burnley being that team that they need to catch. Both of these teams in claret. I think it will be quite an even game. We're going to go an end-to-end 2-2 draw. Both teams' defences aren't looking that shabby, or that good, rather. Sunderland versus Arsenal. Sunderland, we do have to give it a bit of credit to. Currently sitting in 4th, doing a very good job. However, I just don't feasibly see them being able to last that long in that position. They've only scored 12, which is really a mid-table amount, and it's their defence of 8 goals conceded, which is really helping them out. We do keep games quite tight, but up against a very, very good Arsenal team who've only lost once all season in the league, who are on 5 wins in a row. They're looking unstoppable at the moment, are Arteta's men. I'm going to have to go with a 4-1 win to Arsenal. I'm sorry, Sunderland. I respect you as a club, but unfortunately, I just can't back you to win this one at all. Chelsea versus Wolverhampton Wanderers. Chelsea will want to put that disappointing draw against Azerbaijani side Karabakh in the Champions League. Was it last night? And yeah, I'm sure all Chelsea fans will want to forget that one. And I think this is a perfectly good chance. Up against a winless Wolverhampton side in 10 games, only picked up 2 points all season. I am very much aware that Wolverhampton Wanderers have had a shift around in the dugouts in terms of removing Vitor Pereira. Who they're going to replace him with, unsure of yet. James Collins will be the interim for the moment. I've heard names like Martin O'Neill to make a return. That could be a truly interesting one. That one, couldn't it? Sort of. I mean, there's a few others as well which are floating around at the moment. I'm trying to remember who else. It's Gary. Is it Gary O'Neill? It's Gary O'Neill who is the one who's going to return, not Martin O'Neill. And he didn't leave it that long ago. Who else is in that Wolves race? I mean, I'm just waffling at this point. There was someone else who was approaching, like Bruno Lage, maybe. Again, these are coming back. Erik ten Hag would be a mental position of somebody to appoint, wouldn't it? Anyway, all of it doesn't seem like they've got a particularly good. Oh yes, it was Rob Edwards of Middlesbrough manager, which I could see as being a possibility. Anyway, in this particular game, I think at Stamford Bridge, Chelsea win this one by 3-1. On to the next one. We have got into the Championship. We go with Blackburn Rovers versus Derby County. John Eustace visiting his former side. So it's going to be snakes galore. Derby having a bit of a run. 4 wins in a row. I must say I'm very impressed how Eustace has managed to get us now looking competitive. 3 points off the playoffs. That isn't too bad considering where we were a few weeks ago. It just shows how early in the season we still are, and a few results can dramatically change the shape of a season. It really can. We're just over a quarter of the way through, to be fair. So all still to play for. I'm going to back us to lose in order that when they win, I can't be accused of putting a curse on them, right? So I think we're going to lose 4-2. And, a little bit of a dappery about that. A bit of a just not wanting to jinx us while we're doing so well, because it seems I've always predicted Derby to do not that well of late, and then they do well. And when I predict them to do well, they do bad. Blackburn Rovers, to be fair, have also won 3 in a row, so it is going to be a difficult tie. Don't get me wrong about that. Hull City versus Portsmouth. Portsmouth are without a win in 5 games now, 2 draws in that time. Hull City's unbeaten run came to an end against Derby County. They're a team which have been looking quite bright this season, Hull, but maybe they've just been slightly unstabilised by that one. They're quite an erratic end-to-end team. Could see this one being a 1-1 draw. You never know in the Championship. They're always so wildly unpredictable. Millwall versus Preston North End, 4th versus 5th, 1 point separating the two teams. Millwall is one of them weird ones, as having a negative goal difference while being in the playoffs. You'd have to drop down to 15th place West Brom before that happens again. That's a bizarre one. It's just that they're not scoring enough at the moment is their issue, only scoring 16. Preston are actually looking like a team which should be in the playoffs, which is staggering to see. They've won their last 3 games on the spin. Before that, Millwall were on a unbeaten run as well. They lost their last game. I always thought that Preston would be a team which would be dropping out of playoff positions. But I can't be certain at this moment in time. I'm going to stick with prediction I put on the screen here, and it's at the Den as well. I'm going to go 3-1 to Millwall. I can't see Preston lasting all season there. Surely not. They're normally a mid-table side. Borough are hosting Birmingham City at Riverside. There's been a little bit of poor performances sneaking into Borough, and they'll be wanting to put that behind. Up against Birmingham side, which have slowly been creeping up the table, to be fair. Not the most consistent at times, but they're currently in 9th, so they must be doing something all right. I'm going to go, though, Middlesbrough to win this one by 1-0. On to Norwich City versus Leicester City. Well, we know Leicester City are without a win in 5 games and are pretty poor at the moment, but that pales in comparison to how truly dreadful Norwich have been. Yes, they picked up a point in their last game. But before that, they were on a horrendous run. Was it? I think they're now 7 or 8 games without a win. Liam Manning somehow is still with the job. They're keeping the faith for now. Leicester City did. I think they decided to shake it up, didn't they? Well, we are in sacking season, as they say. Oh no, Martin Cifuentes is still at the club. My bad. 2-0, I'm going to go with Leicester City here. Break that bad run of form. I mean, up against Norwich side, who they have double the points of, you would well and truly expect that prediction to come to reality. It should be a Leicester win. It'd be disappointing for the Foxes if it isn't. Sheffield United versus Queen's Park Rangers. I keep on waiting for a Sheffield United turnaround, but they've had 3 losses in a row after they've had 2 back-to-back wins, and they're back in 23rd. And if it wasn't for that 12 points deduction onto Sheffield Wednesday, they would, they'd certainly be much better. They'd be in a position where they'd have, I'm just trying to figure, 8 points. So they'd still be behind Sheffield United, but not by much. And they've actually got the same stats in terms of 11 goals scored, 26 conceded. You'd think Sheffield United will be able to get something, though. Up against the Queen's Park Rangers side, who've lost 3 in a row. Both of them are quite poor run of form. A 2-2 draw. I don't think either side will be looking great at the end of it, but both will probably be relieved that they're not losing the game, at least. Southampton versus Sheffield Wednesday. I've backed Sheffield Wednesday quite a lot. And yes, they've had back-to-back draws, but I can't see. Southampton, I think, are in a bit of a false position at the moment. I think they are going to start lifting up slightly up through the leagues in the upcoming weeks or so. And against this, I've got to go with the Saints to win this one. 4-0 to Southampton. It's at home. It's against a tough Sheffield Wednesday team, which are having a tough, torrid time right now. I do feel for Wednesday fans. Stoke City versus Coventry City. I'm surprised this one's not on the telly, as Mark Robbins faces up against his former club at home. The 2 teams which are currently in the top 2 places in the league. 4 points separating them. Coventry have looked pretty good, only losing 1. But, Mark Robbins, a very defensively sound team. They've got one of the best defenses in the league, conceding actually the best defense in the league, conceding only 9 goals. They don't score as many, 21 goals. It's just still a decent amount, it must be said. But it's one of them ones that their defense is really what they're relying on at the moment. And I think it might prove to be the case because Frank Lampard's sides, having been a person who's watched Frank Lampard's side, tend to struggle a bit more with the ones who lump it up a bit and play that sort of make things uncomfortable for teams. They prefer actual footballing sides, if you will. So I'm going to go with a 1-0 win to Stoke City at the Bet365. Swansea City versus Ipswich Town. Ipswich unbeaten in the last 3. They're now looking finally like they're a team which could potentially challenge for the playoffs, scoring 22 goals. That would be enough to would be enough at the moment to probably put you in the playoff positions. Alas, they're not, purely due to some inconsistency, but they're up against a very inconsistent Swansea side of late. And I do have to back the Tractor Boys to win this one. 2-1 to Ipswich. West Bromwich Albion versus Oxford United. Oxford United are hovering perilously above relegation zone, albeit 4 points clear, and I don't think they've been looking as bad as the bottom 3 at the moment. Gary Rowett is known for that painfully defensive sort of style of play. It's not really working at the moment. West Brom are in a bit of a false position as well. They're without a win in the last 4, but you'd normally expect them to be challenging up towards the top and towards the playoffs. I'm going to go at the Hawthorns, West Brom to win this one. 2-0. Wrexham versus Charlton Athletic. Now, Charlton are unbeaten in 5 and are now in the playoffs. Wrexham are unbeaten in 4, but they've had 2 draws in that one. So they're a bit more 50-50. I do think Wrexham could. It's a championship, and I think Wrexham could nick something in this one. A bit unexpected, maybe. 3-0 to the Welsh side. They're at home as well. Northampton Town versus Mansfield Town. Nigel Clough's men are doing quite a decent job at the moment. Currently 3 points off the playoffs, unbeaten in 5. It must be said, it would be a shock if Mansfield Town get into the playoffs. But on the current balance of form, I would suspect that they may be able to do it. They're up against the Northampton Town team, which they had a decent run not that long ago, but they've now had only one win in the last 5 games, and beginning to slide a bit down the table. And I think that may continue for a little bit further. I'm going to go 2-0 to Mansfield Town here. Just getting the job done. Flying under the radar a bit, maybe. Wycombe Wanderers versus Leyton Orient. Leyton Orient, 2 wins in the last 6 with 4 losses during that time. Wycombe Wanderers have picked up form as well. They're 4 games unbeaten. Ever since they made that managerial change, fairly early on it was, wasn't it? And brought in Michael Duff. They have looked a much better team. And in this one at Adams Park, I think Wycombe win this one by 3-0. It is very cramped up in that mid-table. I mean, a win and other results going their way could potentially see them catapult up to 9th. So we're still very close together at this stage of the season. That's just how ridiculously close it is at present. Blackpool versus Cardiff City. Yeah, Blackpool is looking a real struggle. I don't know if they're going to be able to get out this relegation battle. Steve Bruce left the club in an awful state, and Ian Everett's got a mountain to climb as a result. They're up against a Cardiff side, which, yes, have had a few defeats of late, but they're still 1 point off the automatic zones with a game in hand. I would certainly not rule them out at the moment. In fact, I would suggest that they are the most likely team to take the scruff of the neck of most of the games and manage to get themselves on top of the league. They scored 21, which is technically the joint 3rd best in the league, but conceding 11, that is the joint 2nd best, and it's better than the 2 teams above them. I just think, Cardiff will probably win this one. 3-1 to the Bluebirds. They're just one of them sides which I just can't see them not getting promoted this season. They're such a good team. Bolton Wanderers versus Port Vale. Bolton Wanderers are another one of them quite inconsistent teams, which just knocking on the door of the playoffs, 2 points off it. At the moment, I'm not too sure if they have the consistency to be able to make it. One day they look like they could, another day they couldn't. They are at home, though, up against a Port Vale team, which have now dropped into relegation zone, having been without a win in the last 4 games. It's gone 2 wins, 2 draws, and then 2 losses. Things are beginning to go a bit downwards for Darren Moore's side, and I do back Bolton to win this one. 2-0 to Bolton Wanderers. On to the next one is Bradford City versus Burton Albion. Now, Burton Albion have managed to create a 3-point berth above the relegation zone with a point in midweek against Rotherham United. They're doing what they normally do. They're looking like a side which probably will just be above that relegation zone. I could also see them feasibly just slipping into it, but that's a team which so overperform expectations seasons and season. You think they're destined to relegation, and then they just manage to, out of nowhere, clinch survival. And they are up against the Bradford side, though, which have been immense. They've only lost once. Also, admittedly, they've had 4 draws in a row now, but they are still in the top 2, 1 point off the title. I'm going to have to back Bradford to win this one. It's not going to be a pretty high-scoring game. I'm going to go with a 1-0 win to the Bantams. It'd be great to see Bradford in the Championship. Been a long time since they've been in the 2nd tier. I feel like I say that a lot, but I do generally mean it. South Yorkshire Derby of Doncaster Rovers versus Barnsley. All 3 South Yorkshire teams in the League One are on 18 points, with Barnsley the highest on goal difference and Doncaster the lowest on goal difference, but they're 11th, 12th and 13th respectively. these games can sometimes be quite interesting. I think Barnsley is going to be the most likely of the three teams to be able to compete towards the playoffs. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them in the upcoming weeks move a couple of positions up anyway and start looking really competitive. We know a 4-2 win for Barnsley. Doncaster haven't won in a long time since they had that really good run at the start of the season. Since then, things have been looking a bit poor at the Ecotricity Stadium, I believe it's called, or the Keepmoat Stadium if you are old-fashioned. Exeter City versus Wigan Athletic. A long way to travel. Exeter, I think they could go up a few places at present. They're at crunch point, really, that they could suddenly start sinking a bit or suddenly start going up a bit. A bit like Wigan, actually. There's 1 point separating these two teams. I think it's going to be quite an even game. 1-1 draw is what I'm going to go with at St James's Park here. Huddersfield Town versus Plymouth Argyle. 3 losses in a row for Huddersfield. They'll be hoping to put it to an end against another 3 losses in a row of a team in Plymouth who are currently sitting in relegation zone, which you would not necessarily expect coming into the start of this season. I think both of these teams will just be desperate not to lose, and as a result, we're going to get a 1-1 draw here at Huddersfield's ground. Peterborough United versus AFC Wimbledon. Peterborough have picked up a few more points, a few more wins since. I think they're a very inconsistent team. And they did finally got rid of Darren Ferguson, bringing in Luke Williams. Good manager choice, in my opinion, to be able to do this. Although, admittedly, I don't think he's ever had a relegation scrap, so we'll see how he can adjust to that. And up against a Wimbledon side, which is very strong. They did lose the last game, but before that one, a 5-game unbeaten run. They're still only 2 points off the playoffs, not the automatic positions. So they'll be going for it. I think Peterborough could get a shock win here. 3-1 for Peterborough United at London Road. Certainly makes things not look as bleak as they have done over the past few weeks. Rotherham United versus Lincoln City. This feels like a very old-fashioned League One game, doesn't it? Unbeaten 5 for Rotherham, which has seen them move away from that relegation battle. Lincoln currently in the playoffs in 5th. They've somehow got 25 points accumulated so far. Really impressive stat, that one. But I do think Rotherham's unbeaten run may continue in this one. 2-1 to the Millers at the New York Stadium. That home advantage could be crucial in this one. Stockport County versus Luton Town. Now, Stockport are looking immense week on week at the moment. They look completely unstoppable. However, I think Luton are in that false position that they may be able to start competing a bit upwards in the league. If they start scoring a few more, it feels like I'm saying that a lot recently about Luton. I'm going to go with a nicking of a 1-0 win by Luton in this one. It's not going to be pretty by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a win's a win at the end of the day. On to League 2, we've got Colchester United versus Bromley. Colchester, very mid-table, but they're unbeaten in 4, so you can't quite discredit them at the moment. Bromley quite mid-table as well. They're 2 points off the playoffs, though they've looked a bit better in few of the games that they've been in. Although I will hasten to add that their goal difference is exactly the same. They've both scored 21 and they've both conceded 18. I think this will be a very even game, actually. A 1-1 draw we'll go with. Continues to be one for Colchester, but I think Bromley a very decent side. Could be an outside shout for the playoffs, maybe. Crewe Alexandra versus Shrewsbury Town. Crewe are 1 point off the playoffs, but they've just been too inconsistent to be able to manage to compete to get into that position at the moment. They're up against the Shrewsbury Town team, which are unbeaten in 4 and now managed to lift themselves out relegation zone. They have the confidence behind them. I'm going to go with a 0-0 draw. Bit of a local derby, potentially. Shropshire versus Cheshire. They're not too far away from each other. I mean, as much as a local derby that Shrewsbury Town can have, that is within England, I suppose. I think Shrewsbury's traditional rivals like Telford United, but they're down in Tier 6 now, and Wrexham, which are now in the Championship. So they've not really got many close teams to compete against. Tranmere Rovers, maybe, but even so, still a bit of distance. So yeah, I think Shrewsbury Town versus Crewe, we could potentially call that a local derby, maybe. Questionable. Barnet versus MK Dons. Barnet are 2 points off the playoffs, and with only one defeat in the last 5, they don't look too bad for making it, actually. Milton Keynes Dons are 3 points ahead of them, but they're also 1 point outside the automatic zone. And I'm telling you now, 27 goals scored, 15 conceded. They're looking like a team which should be able to win the league. 1 defeat in the last 5 with 4 wins during that time. I think Paul Warne, he's got to be able to get MK Dons out this league, surely. 1-0 to MK Dons in this one. They're just looking like a team which I don't think will be able to be prevented from getting promotion this season. Barrow versus Grimsby Town. Grimsby Town stuttering a bit, now dropping into 6th, which is still a decent position to be in. But yeah, 2 losses in the last 5, 3 losses in the last 6, if you want to extend it to that. Up against a Barrow team, which is currently unbeaten, on quite a long unbeaten run at that. And I do think Barrow, both of these 2 teams are pretty deprived towns on the coast, if you think about it. So not too much difference overall. Just Grimsby's more focused on fishing and Barrow a bit more on the nuclear submarines. But yeah, I think Barrow's going to win this one at home 3-0. We'll go with Bristol Rovers versus Gillingham. Gillingham are 5 games without a win now. They were at one point looking really likely to be able to get automatic promotion. And I think they could probably get back into the playoffs. They just need that confidence boost back into the club, don't they? And maybe they can be able to do this against the Bristol Rovers team, which have 4 defeats in a row. And I think could potentially be a bit in free fall, start catapulting down the league if they're not careful. So I think 2-0 to Gillingham in this one. I must profess at this point here, I am worried very much for Darryl Clark in the managerial hot seat. Does he know how to get out of this predicament? You know, and I don't think he's a bad manager per se. And he obviously has had a bit of success with Bristol Rovers in the past and at this level, twice getting promoted from League 2 and once from a conference. The conference and League 2 promotions both came with Bristol Rovers. So there's probably a bit of servitude given towards him there, but do start questioning things like this when you start. They were only relegated last season, weren't they? I'm pretty certain that was the case. Yeah, they were. So it was like, it's one of them ones that you don't want to go through too many managers, but if you win League 1 last season, don't expect to be in 16th and looking more likely to be in a relegation scrap again. Chesterfield versus Accrington Stanley. It's really hard to predict Chesterfield. I always get to their predictions and I'm like, I'm not going to have a clue which team is going to turn up. Because some weeks they're absolutely immense and some weeks they're an absolute disaster. And I think up against a team like Accrington, maybe they're just going to lose like a 3-0. We'll go with a 3-0 to Accrington Stanley. It's a mad result. It really is. Because Accrington Stanley only 1 point above relegation zone and Chesterfield in the playoffs. But, you know, it's one of them ones, it could happen. They've done it already this season, shown that they just sometimes have a really weird freak result and then get themselves up and go on a good run of form again. It's just such an odd team at the moment. Crawley Town versus Fleetwood Town. Crawley struggling a bit, let's face it. They did win their last game, but they are currently in the relegation zone. Although I think they are likely potentially to get out of it. They can score a bit more than Shrewsbury can at the moment, from that's for one. But yeah, I think up against a Fleetwood team, they're still going to struggle. Fleetwood unbeaten in 3, 1 point off the playoffs. got to back the Fleetwood in this one. 2-1 to Fleetwood Town. So yeah, unfortunate Crawley's position will continue to be like that. Harrogate Town versus Oldham Athletic. 18th versus 19th. Harrogate are 4 games lost in a row. You got to begin questioning Simon Weaver, whether he can actually get them any further than this 19th place in League Two. It feels like it happens season after season that they're in this sort of bottom area. Now, the thing is, if you change it, things start becoming a bit more difficult because maybe they're so used to this one philosophy that things... I mean, they're not going to sack him because his dad is literally the chairman. But yeah, I mean, I would start questioning things as a Harrogate fan of potentially where's the aspirations at for this Yorkshire side. I don't think they need to worry too much because he's been under pressure before potentially, and I think he is going to win this one 3-0. Take all of the nerves off that you need. Newport County versus Walsall. Walsall, top of the league, but again, they're 3 games without a win now. Are they going to have that wobble again as they did last season? You don't want it to happen, you really don't, but there's a sneaky suspicion every time that they look like they're going to do well, they're going to suddenly bottle it. And, you know, against a Newport team that has a large degree of pressure, they should be beating a team like Newport. I can just see this one ending in 0-0 here. Yeah, it would be a huge upset, to be honest, to do that, wouldn't it? Salford City versus Cambridge United. Salford, a couple of wins. Seem to have gone into the top 3 now. And I do think they're going to be able to maybe get another one here up against a Cambridge side, which are a bit uncertain at the moment. We're going to go 4-1 to Salford City as they continue to try and justify maybe their place in the top 3, because at the moment there are times when they don't even look like a playoff team. Like 20 goals scored, probably not enough. 80 goals conceded, probably too many to be in that top 3. So they're going to want to put some doubting behind them. Bless me. Oh, sorry about that. Swindon Town versus Tranmere Rovers. Swindon, I think, a bit of a surprise package at the moment, aren't they? Being in that automatic zone. I wouldn't have managed to thought that at the start of the season. But yeah, they're equal on points with Walsall at the moment, and all credit to them. Up against a Tranmere side, which, okay, only 1 defeat in the last 6, but there's 4 draws in there. So I think Tranmere might be ripe a bit for the taking it here. Tranmere can score. By no means are they bad in defence. They can score 22, but conceded 20 might be a bit of an issue. 3-1 will go to Swindon Town in this one as they continue to look to make a return to League One, which it feels a very long time ago since they were at that level now. Onto the National League, we've got Aldershot Town versus Forest Green Rovers. Aldershot 4 defeats in a row. It's not the start which any of the Aldershot men would have wanted. Certainly not after removing Tommy Widdrington. They have now brought in John Coleman, so see if he can change things up. And I think maybe he can. I mean, I've always rated John Coleman as a decent manager. So he was at Accrington Stanley and did some wonderful job with that club, and he did it for such a long time. And you know, Forest Green Rovers, they're looking a bit shaky at the moment. Only 1 win in the last 6. I think this could be a point here. I'm going to go an end-to-end 3-all draw, because we know, if you don't know already, and you don't follow National League football, 29 goals scored for Aldershot Town, 36 conceded. You know, they're the third worst team rather, sorry, in goals conceded. But in terms of goals scored, they'd be in the playoffs. It's a bizarre, utterly chaotic club. So a 3-all draw isn't actually that unlikely of a result to happen if there was going to be a draw. Boston United versus Rochdale, with 3 games in hand now above the 2 teams above them. If they win all 3 of them, they then suddenly make themselves look indestructible, like properly at the top of the team. So obviously they're all games in hands and they're not always the easiest ones. I think one of them's against Scunthorpe. For some reason, their ground is just has no drainage at all. It's just a complete bog, and they just keep on postponing games. But they're not at home at this one, so they don't need to worry because they are travelling to Boston, who have a very decent setup now with their new ground, I must say. I think Rochdale do win this one. They are a good, solid, decent team, and I think they deserve to be back in the Football League after such a long time. I think they're one of them teams that I think are very likely to get the title this season. 3-0 to Rochdale as they continue some good momentum that they've had. They've only conceded 7 goals all season as well, so that defence is rock solid. Brackley Town versus Boreham Wood. Boreham Wood is one of them ones that is also queuing up to make a appearance to the Football League that they've never done before. It would be their first time in Football League if they got promoted. And I must say, they've shown great results in FA Cup performances time after time. And so it's one of the ones, it wouldn't be too surprising if they'd be able to be really good and strong in the Football League. But Africa's a Brackley Town team who've also proven their worth up against Football League teams, in particularly Notts County, knocking them out on a penalty shootout to get through to the second round of the FA Cup. It must be congratulated. Well done, Brackley. Enjoy your trip to Burton. And I think that may have given them a bit of a boost, a morale booster, which they needed quite desperately after a bit of a bad run of form. We'll go with a cheeky 1-0 win for Brackley Town. A bit of a scrappy result to get, but I'm sure none of the Brackley fans would be complaining, would they? Eastleigh versus York City. York City undefeated in 5, scoring the most amount of goals in the league at 35. I certainly would suspect that they should be challenging towards the title. Yes, for 2 points, but 2 wins away from it, and they've got a game in hand up against both Carlisle and Boreham Wood. It's not improbable, and I think up against an Eastleigh are an odd team, but I think we watched Eastleigh in a live watch along, and they were very strong, very competitive against Walsall. I will say that, but I do think that they lack the full energy, maybe, to be able to maintain a game beyond 60 minutes, which is where their downfall has been a bit this season. So we'll go with a 2-0 win for York City in this one, continuing the standout performances that they've had. Because they had a fantastic result recently, a 4-0 win, I think it was, against Gateshead. So yeah, they are certainly looking on a really good run of form. Gateshead need a reaction. Speaking about Gateshead, up against having had that poor performance against York. Really poor defence, conceded 38, second worst in the league. Scoring 24, though, a decent amount. I think they just need to keep the goals stops conceding. You start building something there. You know what? I think this is actually going to be quite a low-scoring affair. Up against the Solihull Moors team, only 1 point above them. We'll go 1-0 win for Gateshead, which, okay, admittedly, is a bit bonkers to say, but at home, you never know. SE Halifax Town versus Hartlepool United. Hartlepool are 3 games unbeaten. They are, I think, too cut off for me to be playoff challenging. But maybe they can start mounting a bit of a push. Halifax haven't won now in the last 3. I think it'll be a good time to play Halifax. They're 2 points apart, these two teams. Halifax are looking more downwards at the moment than upwards. I think we're going to go with a 1-0 win to Hartlepool, the Monkey Hangers. Morecambe versus Sutton United. 2 teams in the relegation zone, both at 1 point off safety. Huge game, this one. Cannot be overstated. It really can't at the moment. And I think we could potentially see a win for Morecambe. It would be only their... well, actually, technically, Morecambe have had 3 wins and Sutton have had only 2. So Morecambe have had more wins. They've just had a few more losses. That's putting it politely. They're fine going forward. They just concede a lot of goals. And I think Morecambe will nick this one at their home ground 1-0, which if all games go their way, put them outside of relegation zone, which would be huge for Morecambe, who have had quite a turbulent few months, but finally at the other end of the tunnel now. I'm sure they're just delighted to have new ownership. It'll be an added bonus if they manage to stay up, but if they have to go to the Conference North, or the National League North rather, so be it. They'll probably build a competitive squad back and be a Scunthorpe in a few years' time. Talking about Scunthorpe and Yeovil is in a bit of a similar boat, actually. Both of these two teams came a bit catapulting down and have now finally found their feet a bit at the National League level. Scunthorpe getting promoted last season and are now actually in the playoffs of the National League and are doing quite a good job. 4 points off the title. 3 points off the title. Unbeaten in the last 4. Up against a Yeovil Town team who haven't won in the last 4. You've got to back Scunthorpe to win this one. 2-1 to Scunthorpe United at Glanford Park. The next one, Tamworth versus Woking. Tamworth unbeaten before their last game in the league, and that is a bit disappointing maybe for them, and they'll be looking to rector 5 in this one, as they are at home to a Woking side who are unbeaten in the last 5. It's going to be a difficult one, but we know Woking aren't always the most consistent. 3-2 to Tamworth, I'm going to go with. Two very decent teams, don't get me wrong, but Woking are a very mid-table team. I'd actually argue that maybe Woking is slightly better at the moment than Tamworth on pure stats alone in terms of 21 goals scored, 21 conceded, whereas Tamworth has scored 20 and conceded 22. So the stats don't lie. Woking should be better, but they just don't see out these draws into wins like Tamworth can. Truro City versus Altrincham. Truro, I think, is unfortunately looking for maybe an instant return to the National League South. They're finding it quite difficult to adjust to this level. Altrincham have had a difficult season. They got rid of Phil Parkinson, their long-standing manager. And you know what? I think there's not been a replacement as of yet, I don't think. And I think this could be quite a close game. A 0-0 draw we're going to go with. I think Altrincham will survive. Maybe go a couple of places higher. A few places higher. A bit of a mid-table finish, maybe, is the best we can hope for at the moment. Wealdstone versus Braintree Town. Braintree also looking like they're going to struggle. They have not won in a long time now, and they are a bit like the Burton of the National League, though. They do seem to scrap and compete and manage to just stay up. They've done that for the last couple of seasons now. However, Wealdstone, 4 points off the playoffs. Okay, bit of a mountain to climb in terms of, I think the top 7 is already looking streaks above everyone else, and almost you can call the season now, and then top 7, I would not be surprised if they finished it. But, Wealdstone will continue to try and challenge for a position in the playoffs, which would be a huge upset if that happened. 3-2 to Wealdstone, we'll go with. Or Wealdstone. I don't know how you pronounce some of these names, I'm sorry. Southend United versus Carlisle United. This is apparently being streamed on TikTok. The first ever game to be streamed on TikTok. Very interesting, very fascinating how it goes. Both of these two teams are 5 wins in a row. Well, not 5 wins in a row, so 5 games unbeaten, with Carlisle being slightly better with only 1 draw, as Southend's had 2. But, 2 very decent teams. I think Carlisle might be a bit better in this one. They've scored 32 goals, a huge amount. Admittedly, Southend have got one of the best defences in the league, conceding 12. That's a very impressive stat at the moment. I think Carlisle, though, do win this one. 2-0 to the Cumbrian side, going all the way back up north with the 3 points. I think it would be a bit of a shock if Carlisle doesn't, at this moment in time, doesn't make a return. Whether that's automatically via the playoffs, it doesn't really matter. But they are certainly a team that I would argue are too strong for this level. Jake Buxton's Alfreton Town are next, and they're up against the Fylde side, who are doing very impressive. Despite a loss, if it wasn't for playing South Shields, they probably wouldn't have lost that last game. Before that, we had 4 wins in a row. Up against an Alfreton team who are slowly turning things around. They've got a cheeky 1-0 against Chorley, but this is a much more difficult battle, I think we can all agree. They are at home, but I think Fylde do win this one. I think it will be damaged limitations, though, and it will be a 1-0 win for Fylde. I think defence is probably where Jake Buxton will want, as he was, of course, a defender during his career, is probably where he's going to be prioritising, because it is one of the most leakiest defence, is conceding 29 goals so far this season. It is also one of the worst attacks, only scoring 11. It's not looking bright, I will say that, for Alfreton Town. We've got a bit of a mountain to climb, even though there's only 1 point, only goal difference, actually, keeping them in relegation zone. It is... The players need to step right up at the moment. Bedford Town versus Merthyr Town. Very interesting one in this one is Merthyr Town are 3 wins in a row, which have now seen themselves placed into the playoff positions. Wasn't entirely expecting this for their first season. I would have expected a bit more of a mid-table, and not going to lie, I think that might still be on the cards. Up against a Bedford Town team who were unbeaten in 5 before their last loss just this week gone. I think it's one of them ones that Bedford's about where I expect them to be come the end of the season. I don't suspect too many changes from that final position. I think Merthyr Town win this one. They've been very good of late. 4-2 to Merthyr Town. We now actually talk about in this... It's 5 Welsh teams, isn't it, that we now talk about on this channel. Very decent. Buxton versus Chester. Buxton lost the last game, but before that had 4 wins in a row. You'd hope that the manager of the month curse does not come to bite them, because that would be a right shame, because they were really good before that. 10 out of 10 performances almost every single week. But they are, I think, might start to struggle. Up against a Chester team, okay. There are only 1 loss in the last 5, but a lot of draws in there. And if they start converting these draws to wins, I think they could be a bit deadly. And I think Chester does win this one. 4-2 to Chester. Bit disappointing maybe for Buxton. I think that might be fair to say. But, I really want Buxton to win this one. I really do. Curzon Ashton versus Scarborough Athletic. 7th versus 5th. However, Scarborough have lost the last 4 games in a row, and Curzon Ashton are unbeaten in the last 4. It does suddenly flip perspectives a bit, doesn't it? And considering how good Scarborough did at the start of the season, I'm now beginning to consider, should they carry on going with their current manager, because they clearly have the ability to get the playoffs, but Jonathan Green in, is he the man to take them to that position? Because at the moment, on the face of the play, okay, yeah, he took them out of the Northern Premier League, but he's not managed to yet, to me, see much more than a mid-table manager at the National League North level. Maybe being harsh, but I think there is potential in this club if they just took a bit of a change in direction. And I do think Curzon Ashton will win this one. I think we're going to see a 2-1 win for Curzon Ashton. They're at home and they're on a very good run of form. I think Curzon Ashton at the moment far more likely to reach the playoffs than Scarborough as well, on the basis of everything I've seen. Hereford versus Southport. Southport did manage to get a win in their last game, which will be a huge confidence boost. And now they're only 2 points off safety. It was looking at one point in time like it was going to be a bit of a protracted one. And Hereford are only 4 points above them. On no wins in the last 5. It's looking a bit more ropey, I think, for the Bulls. I think we're going to have a draw in this one. A 1-1 draw we'll go with. Kidderminster Harriers versus Darlington. Another side who just runs a great form. 5 games unbeaten for Kidderminster Harriers, but somehow occasionally gets a random upset given against them. And I think Darlington maybe could be the team to provide that. On their day, they are a playoff quality team, Darlington. That's just not been seen enough this season. And I reckon a 1-0 win for Darlington. A little nicking away from home. Suddenly makes everything flip out with different perspectives, because I think Kidderminster don't score enough. They've only scored 20 and conceding too many, conceding 19. Okay, that's not the worst conceding rate, but to score only 20 at the moment, you'd be struggling to reach the playoffs. I must confess. Leamington versus Marine. Marine somehow find themselves in mid-table despite having a -8 goal difference. So congratulations to them, I suppose, because I'm not suspecting they stay there all season. Only 1 goal difference less is Leamington on -9, but they're finding themselves in the relegation zone. You know, they've only had 3 wins all season, a long run of they've had 4 defeats in the last 5 games. It's looking a bit bad. And I must say, Marine are going to win this one here. 2-0 to Marine. Don't give up hope, Leamington, because I think there may be joy coming around the corner not too long in the distant future. Just keep the faith. Macclesfield versus AFC Telford United. 2 Phoenix clubs up against each other in this one. As Telford in 17th, probably roughly where you would expect them, maybe a couple of places higher, 16th to 14th. It wouldn't be totally outlandish to suggest that they may 17th to 14th. Don't think anywhere between there would be too unsurprising for them at this level. But they are up against a Macclesfield team who've won 4 games in a row, just 2 goals off goal difference shy of being in the playoffs. I've got to back Macclesfield to win this one. 1-0 to Macclesfield as they'll probably find themselves in the playoffs come at the end of the weekend. Oxford City versus Worksop Town. Oxford City in 23rd. They did win their last game, though, and that does change things a lot. Because looking at Oxford, they've conceded 28, which is horrendous. It's a poor amount to concede. The scoring 24 does imply to me they should be able to get out the relegation zone. They're 2 points off safety. They should be able to do that at the moment. Up against a Worksop team who I think are now beginning to struggle. Conceding 29, scoring 21, so they're still scoring, but they're beginning to float down a bit. I'm going to go with a 0-0 draw. I can't edge out which one would win in this occasion, but I think a lot of people would be relieved if Oxford City do get relegated, because it means less further to travel, although not necessarily the case, because it depends, of course, who comes up. Radcliffe versus Chorley. Chorley on a really bad run of form. No wins in the last 6. Radcliffe, really good run of form. Like, really, really good. Out of the last 6 games, this is all I have on my screen. They have won 5 out of the last 6. They are looking a phenomenal team. They're definitely looking well worth being in them. I don't think they're quite quality yet to be able to get to the title, although they have scored 3 goals more than South Shields at 33. Conceding 16 as well, very decent. But yeah, I think any of them top 3 are going to be in. They're probably going to be involved in the playoffs at the moment. Looking at it, I've got to back Radcliffe to win this one 2-0. They're just looking so unstoppable at this moment in time. South Shields versus Kingston Town. Talk about unstoppable. Yes, they're only in goal difference at the top of the league, but they've got 2 games in hand as well over Fylde, who are behind them, it must be said. Only conceded 8 goals, scoring 30, a very good team. They're going to be at home as well to Kings Lynn, who did win their last game, before that hadn't had a win in the last 5. You got to back South Shields, surely. 2-1 to South Shields. I must make my way to South Shields at some point this season. That is a huge must that I must do. I normally manage to make it at least once a season, if not twice. I've just been going to other games at the moment, and not going to lie, I'm currently looking at potentially going to Sunderland RCA versus CM Red Star in a local derby on the Saturday instead. I'm not quite sure because I need to see where my plans fully align. But yeah, I think South Shields could potentially wait another another weekend in the future. Because there's a lot of games that I've got coming up that I've got in my calendar. If you want to hear some of the ones in my calendar, I've got Bishop Auckland versus Matlock on the 15th. I need to actually buy tickets to Newcastle versus Sunderland Ladies on the 16th on the Saturday. I've got no game on the 22nd because I'm doing something else that weekend. I'm going to be doing a live watch along on the 29th. Actually, no, sorry. I'm thinking of maybe potentially going in person to Derby versus Borough. If I can buy a ticket, I need to check when they go out. Then the week after, on the 6th, I've got a live watch along, which I'll be doing of Derby versus Leicester. And then on the 9th, we'll see Spennymoor versus Buxton. So there's a lot of games in that position at the moment, which means that there aren't really many opportunities to be able to go into it. Bring back the Tuesday prediction. Did I ever do predictions on Tuesdays? I could have sworn I've never done predictions on a Tuesday. I may be wrong about that. I can't recall doing it on a Tuesday. I know I didn't traditionally do them on Thursdays. I know that. I used to make videos on Tuesdays. You are right. I did used to do that. Anyway, Spennymoor versus Peterborough Sports. We just mentioned Spennymoor in terms of games I'm potentially thinking of going to. They're just outside the playoffs on goal difference. They are going to be up against Peterborough Sports, who are currently just above relegation zone on goal difference alone. I think both of these teams will be desperate to get something from this and result in a 1-1 draw. And be flying forward, flying tackles as well. It'll be interesting. At the moment, it's quite hard to tell because some of them have played 14 and some have played 15, some of them have played 16 games. So it does create a bit of an uneven table. That'll start settling itself out, I imagine, towards end of December, January time. It'll be uneven a bit, maybe with some of the FA Trophy runs as well. I think this is because of the FA Cup runs, why they're so uneven at the moment. On to the National League South, got SE2 Totten, or Totten, I don't know how you pronounce it, versus Ebbsfleet United. Ebbsfleet have won the last 2 games, looking a bit like turning the corner, but Totten have only lost once in the last 6, and all the other games were wins. Yeah, I think this could be an even game. A 0-0 draw. I know Totten don't score a lot. They've only drawn once, but it could be one of them ones that I don't think Ebbsfleet are disastrous. I can't see them get the playoffs at the moment, but I just, they're one of the ones which can't score, but both teams can defend. Bath City versus Dagenham and Redbridge. Dagenham and Redbridge, 5 out of the last 6 games have either been a win or a draw, so they've only had 1 loss in the last 6. Compared to Bath City, 2 wins in the last 5. And 3 losses at that time. I think Dagenham and Redbridge slightly better at the moment, managed to push themselves up a bit. I'm going to have to back Dagenham and Redbridge for this one. 3-1 to the Daggers. Chelmsford City versus Hampton and Richmond Borough. Hampton and Richmond Borough have lost 5 in a row. They were at one point looking likely to be in the playoff positions. Now I'm nowhere near convinced that is going to be the case. And you know what? I think you're going to have to start calling time on the manager in this one. If they continue going in this direction, it's going to be a longer season. Alan Julian, I've got to say, you got to go. He has not managed to do anything. He got them to 18th last season. This season's looking no different. It's not looking like there's going to be much of an improvement in that. They're currently 17th. There's not looking like improvements, and sometimes you just need to change your manager to get improvements. And look at Chelmsford side, who are mid-table, who are a bit, mediocre, I think is fair to say. I think we may see an end to it losing by Hampton Richmond. A 1-1 draw in this one. But yeah, not great. Salisbury are only in relegation zone on goal difference, and I think they may be able to get something from this one. I know we're up against Chesham, very decent team. Only lost once in the last 6 games. But we're going to go with this one, a 2-2 draw, which would be able to see them in a position where they're not quite in the playoffs, but if games go their way, you know, they suddenly start making it look a bit more likely. Dover Athletic versus Enfield Town. Dover, 4 draws in the last 6 games, but not a win. They've been close, but no cigar for a lot of them. And I think this might be a good one for Enfield Town to come into. We've only won once in the last 6 and lost all them other games. They're going to need to start picking up some points desperately soon. And I'm going to go with a 0-0 draw in this one. And if they can, you know, that would be maybe a bit of a confidence booster. I don't know. But yeah, they're currently just hovering about relegation zone. Eastbourne Borough versus Weston-super-Mare. I think Weston-super-Mare are falling away a bit from the title race, and I think Eastbourne Borough could potentially seize the opportunity. This is going to be a totally random prediction because they're currently in relegation zone, but I'm going to go 3-0 to Eastbourne Borough. Weirder things have happened, but this is one of them ones which I'm almost certainly going to be getting wrong. Farnborough versus Dorking Wanderers. Dorking Wanderers have beaten the last 5, 4 wins in a row on that one. They're up against the Farnborough team who have only won once in the last 5 and are 1 point above relegation zone. Gonna have to back Dorking. I think it will be a competitive game, don't get me wrong. 4-3 to Dorking Wanderers. Yeah, I think Farnborough are going to be probably around about that 19th position at the moment. 18th, 19th. Can't see them overly managing to be much more competitive than that. Horsham versus Slough Town. Slough are 4 defeats in a row. Again, my senses are pricking up. I think you need to change the manager. From Scott Davis, not really that great. I know he's been their manager since 2022, and you know, a bit of loyalty, and he did do quite well last season with Slough, managing to get them into a position. Very early on in 2024, but 25, I want to say. But you know, you're in the relegation zone. Wake up and smell the coffee. And I think they're almost destined to lose this one. And you've got to say, they've got to make a change for me. Because they are up against playoff challenging Horsham. But more than that, undefeated in the last 6, 4 wins as part of that. Horsham are going to batter them. 4-0 to Horsham as they continue to do well over the odds. I think a lot of people would have suspected. But yeah, all credit to go to them. Torquay are somehow in the playoff in 6th, despite only having 2 wins in the last 5 games. They're falling away a bit, I think. But we know Torquay, they possess quality. Surely they'd be able to show it up against a team which haven't won a game in the last 5, by the way, in Maidenhead United. I think maybe they might. Torquay to win this one by 3-1. Maidstone versus Chippenham. Maidstone have lost the last 2 games, but before that one of a decent run of form and did look like they were going to get to the playoffs at some point. They're only 3 points off it as well. It's maybe a good chance to get back to winning ways against a Chippenham team who've only won once all season and are on 7 points. Yeah, 3-0 to Maidstone United. I cannot see Chippenham winning this one. Tonbridge Angels versus Hornchurch. Hornchurch currently top of the league, unbeaten in 15 games, by the way. They've not lost a single game this season. They are well deserving to be in their top of the league position. And I think at the moment, no one seems to be able to catch them, and they seem to be doing a very good job. And I can't say that they're going to stumble against Tonbridge Angels. I think we're going to win this one by... It'll be a 1-0. I'll give a bit of credit to Tonbridge Angels in this one. But yeah, another win under the belt for Hornchurch, which will make it their 11th of the season. Worthing versus Hempstead Town. 1 defeat in the last 6 for Hempstead, and the rest of them all wins. But Worthing have won 3 games in a row, so one of these 2 teams are going to come to an end of a very good run of form. I think Worthing's going to win this one at home 3-0. It's got to be that home advantage. At the moment, Hempstead are struggling to score. They've scored only 18, but they've only conceded 9. So in terms of defensively, very good job. They just need to start scoring. I just think Worthing's going to be able to unlock something here. They're 3rd highest scorers in the league at 25 goals as well. So, yeah, I mean, that could be a very exciting game to watch out for. Aston Villa versus Bournemouth in the Premier League on Sunday. Bournemouth currently in that Europa League position in 5th. Only goal difference preventing them from getting into Champions League at the moment. And only Areola is a very decent manager, I must say. So is Unai Emery, who did lose his last game. Before that, had 5 games unbeaten with 4 wins in a row before that loss last week. I think this could be an even game. We're going to go with a 1-1 draw. I can't quite pick a winner at Villa Park here. Brentford versus Newcastle United. Brentford yet again proving the doubters wrong in that mid-table position. Lots of people said they were going to be relegated. Not me. I did not think so. I thought it was just going to be a continuation of what they're doing. And they've had 3 wins in the last 5 games. I know Newcastle had a good win in midweek against Athletic Club, but in 13th, I think they're a bit distracted by Europe at the moment, maybe. 4-2 to Brentford. Not a great performance, I think, from the Magpies. Crystal Palace versus Brighton and Hove Albion. Much of a forced rivalry if you speak to anybody else from outside of these 2 places. These 2 fan bases, rather. Yeah, I mean, it's not really a rivalry, is it? It's just because neither of these 2 other teams have a rivalry. There's 1 point splitting the 2 of these teams. I do think Crystal Palace is slightly better, especially when it comes to them big occasions. They've been looking recently. They've defeated Liverpool a couple of times, won the FA Community Shield, won the FA Cup. They've been living for them big occasions, and the fan base will make sure that this is another one of them big occasions. And I think Palace does win this one by 2-1. But be sure to suspect some red cards in this one. Nottingham Forest versus Leeds United. Can both of these teams just be relegated already? Thankfully, Forest have only had 1 win all season. They're looking pretty dire, but they have brought in Sean Dyche, who, credit where it's due, does know what to do in this level. Thankfully, even if they get a win, they'll still be in relegation zone. I do think Forest do beat Leeds here. 1-0 win to Nottingham Forest. I just think Sean Dyche does know how to get a few results at this level. Manchester City versus Liverpool. Liverpool finally managed to get themselves back together. I was worried for a moment and thought Slot maybe a bit under pressure for the managerial job, but he's managed to recoup it quite well. He won against Villa last week. He won against Real Madrid as well in the Europe game, the Champions League. And he's up against now Manchester City. Now, 1 point separates these 2 teams, but Manchester City be much better. In terms of in the Premier League, only 1 loss in the last 6, compared to Liverpool only winning once in the last 5. But I do think Liverpool might win this one. We'll go 2-0 to Liverpool and say that they are back. Cheltenham Town versus Notts County. For some reason, a random rogue League 2 game on a Monday night. They've been doing all sorts of wacky, weird things with League 2 at the moment. I say let them at the moment. But, only 1 defeat in the last 6 for Notts County. A very decent-looking team. And they're travelling to Cheltenham, who, yes, are unbeaten in 4, but they're still down in 20th for a reason. I think it'll be a very competitive and exciting game in front of the cameras. 5-3 to Notts County. Absolutely end-to-end riveting stuff. Chelmsford City versus Hornchurch. I think we could see Hornchurch lose their first game here. It'd be completely rogue, completely wacky, but a 2-1 Chelmsford City is what I've got written down. You know, I doubt they're going to go invincible, and this could be one of them odd results. Bit of National League games here. We've got Forest Green Rovers versus Tamworth. I think that Forest Green Rovers win this one. They have been a bit poor of late, but, you know, they'll probably put their ideas up in this one and win 3-0 to the Gloucestershire side. York City versus Rochdale, a very exciting one to watch for the neutrals. I would imagine both of these two teams very strong. I think it's going to be a cagey game, and I do think York win this one 1-0 to York City. So, and we've got a ton of EFL Trophy games to go through now. Now, EFL Trophy. Do you love it? Do you loathe it? It's a really Marmite divisive tournament, especially when some of these games are completely useless and some of them are actually really important. We're going to start with one which is actually decently important because Wolves under 21s can qualify if they get a win and Stockport lose, or even draw in this one. So essentially, Wolves must not lose, but I think Salford are in a position that if they lose and Stockport also win, they can get, it's very unlikely, but they can get knocked out also with 6 points. And so, yeah, I think it's unlikely. It's unlikely, but it could possibly happen. So Salford will want to make sure that they don't lose this one. So I'm going to go a 3-2 win for Salford City, guaranteeing them into the next round. Wigan Athletic are travelling to Stockport County. Again, so if Wolves lose this one and Wigan win it by a large enough, like a margin to be able to flip the 3-goal difference against Stockport County, they can get to the next round. I think this will be a very defensive game by Stockport. I think it's going to be a 0-0 draw, and I think Stockport are going to win the extra point on penalties, which would see Salford and Stockport through to the next round. On to Tranmere Rovers versus Blackpool. Well, this is a dead rubber game. So this is what I'll talk about. This is a traditional dead rubber game. The only thing which is really riding on this game is which one gets home advantage in the next round. So there may be a little bit of things to play for, but ultimately not too much. So I think it's going to be a 1-1 draw, and I think Tranmere Rovers are going to be the team to earn the extra point on penalties. But that wouldn't really matter because Blackpool will have such a superior goal difference that they will stay in first place anyway. On to the next one. Again, another relatively irrelevant game other than who gets home advantage. Bradford City versus Doncaster Rovers. Both of these teams have won their 2 games and both of them are guaranteed to get through to the next round. I think Doncaster Rovers win this All Yorkshire affair. 3-1 to Doncaster Rovers. I think they need it more because they need something to kickstart their momentum back again. Bradford are sort of just content. Now, I know Bradford do love a good trophy run, though, so that might be something to watch out for. Barnsley versus Lincoln City in the Northern Group D. Again, as long as Barnsley do not lose so astronomically, like by over 6-0. If they lose over by 6-0, they're horrendous. But that would put them out to Man United's under 21s team. But I think it's highly unlikely that that's happening. And technically, Barnsley could also win this one by a 4-goal swing. So as long as they beat them by 2-goal, well, it'd be 3-0, then they could do. So I think Barnsley will come out flying and win and start 4-0 up. But I think Lincoln City peg it back to a 4-3. Win for Barnsley, admittedly, but it won't be enough for them to get the home advantage. Oldham Athletic versus Bolton Wanderers. An absolutely useless game. Bolton are already top of the league and they can't make any difference. I mean, if they lose, sure, they can finish second. It's just a must-not-lose situation for Bolton. Oldham can't qualify, though. It's a useless game other than local bragging rights. I'm going to go 2-0 to Bolton. Neither of these two teams want to play this game, let's be honest. Harrogate Town versus Newcastle United's under-21s. Now, again, a bit of a useless one. Harrogate Town can get the home advantage if they win this one, which might provide that bit of added incentive. Newcastle can't do anything. So I'm going to go 2-0 to Harrogate Town. It's at their home ground. Like, you can't play the under-21's home ground anyway. I think they'd be happy with that and see them at home as well. Port Vale versus Fleetwood Town. Again, this is ultimately just deciding who's at home. I'm going to go Port Vale to win this one. 3-1 to Port Vale. Accrington Stanley are playing against Leeds United. This is an utterly useless game. I think, although we have seen how bad Leeds United's defence is, already conceding 8. I think Accrington Stanley will just use this as shooting practice. 7-0 to Accrington Stanley, but it won't mean anything. It will give them a bit of a confidence boost potentially going into the next game, but it means absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things. Okay, we're coming into there's 2 games happening in Northern Group H, which are actually both of these do make things slightly interesting because Crewe Alexandra is currently on 6 points. Burton is on 3, Chesterfield is on 3, Liverpool under 21 is on 0. So Burton are playing Crewe. So Burton need to make sure that they beat Crewe to at least guarantee to be in the next round. Chesterfield will be hoping to better the result of Burton. So as long as they win it or get the extra point on the penalty shootout and Burton lose it or whatever, as long as they can better Burton's result, they will be in the next round. Liverpool can technically leapfrog Chesterfield and Burton to get through to the next round, as long as they defeat Chesterfield by a decent enough margin. Again, it's a huge goal swing margin. It's a 5-goal swing, and hope Burton lose, and that'll put them into the next round. So this one's an actual interesting one. Crewe will basically just not want to lose so that they can guarantee a home advantage. But yeah, I think in this one, Crewe doesn't really matter too much. And I think Burton win this one 4-1. So Crewe at that point will then have the possibility, potentially, of dropping out because they would have then lost goal difference of. They would still be hoping Chesterfield essentially will at that point then need a goal difference swing of 10 goals, which, let's be realistic, isn't going to happen. I think Liverpool win this one, under 21s win this one by 4-1. I don't think Chesterfield have done particularly well in this tournament. If it wasn't for their stupid throwing away against Crewe, then they probably could have got through. But, you live and die by the sword. That one result is probably enough to mean that they just couldn't care less about this tournament for me. Newport County versus Exeter City. Well, this is also a group which is actually all to play for. All 4 teams have got 3 points. So whichever 2 teams that win their encounters in this go through to the next round. That is essentially it, because they all also have a goal difference of 0. It's got to be decided all on this night. This is going to be probably the group to look at. Newport County are hosting Exeter City. I think Exeter win this. I think the league difference will show. I'm going to go with a 1-0 win to Exeter City. Cardiff City versus Arsenal in 21. I think Cardiff probably view this tournament as a bit of a distraction from them getting promoted and will actually be grateful to probably get out of it. So I think Arsenal in 21s win this one 3-2. So I think that's so far the only under-21s team I've actually got going through at the moment is Arsenal's under-21s. And they'll also be going through along with Exeter, which is currently the top 2, ironically, as it is already. Bristol Rovers versus Plymouth Argyle. Again, a game which doesn't matter too much. If Bristol, the only thing that will matter is if Bristol Rovers manage to win the penalty shootout against Bristol Rovers or against Plymouth Argyle, or win the game, then they'll get the home advantage. But ultimately, it doesn't matter too much. I think Plymouth win this one 2-0. You know, it's nothing game. And I think Plymouth probably want the performances. I mean, both of them are coming in with a bit of bad run of form, so probably need it to maybe kickstart a bit of a better form, maybe. Northampton Town versus Shrewsbury Town. Shrewsbury, if they win this, can qualify for the next round. Even if they draw it, well, I know because of goal difference, but they need to, so it's basically a must-win game for Shrewsbury. Northampton, they're safe, they're fine. They'll be hoping to win this one so they can stay at home, but ultimately Northampton are fine. And I think Northampton just dominate this one. 4-1 to Northampton Town. They've been looking quite good. At the moment, they've not conceded a goal so far in this tournament. So yeah, we'll back for Cobblers for this one. MK Dons versus Swindon Town. Now, the only team who's going to make to win this one is Swindon Town, and they'll need to win by a 2-goal margin to be able to go up into overtake Reading. But I think MK Dons, maybe Paul Vaughan will actually start taking this tournament seriously. This one 3-1 to MK Dons. But yeah, I don't think either of these two teams will be caring that much about dropping out, because you know what? It means they get to focus on their promotion race in the League Two, maybe even title race at one point. A South London derby of Bromley versus Wimbledon. Not only is local pride on the stake here, but is also a place for the next round, because there's only 1 point which is separating these two teams. Wimbledon basically don't want this to go to a penalty shootout. If they can win this, it would be great. I actually think Bromley might edge this. I think Bromley like tournaments a bit more. We go 2-0 to Bromley, which would mean that Wimbledon drop out of the next round, and Bromley managed to qualify for the next round. Crawley Town versus Peterborough United. There's 1 goal difference separating these two teams. So they're both on 3 points. So ultimately, this is one which will determine who's going through to the next round. I think Peterborough win it. I think the league difference will come through and Peterborough will show themselves to be worthy. 4-3 to Peterborough United. Very end-to-end one. Gillingham versus Wycombe Wanderers. Both on the same amount of points. So both desperately don't want to drop out of this one. And to be fair, if either team wins this, it's likely that they're going to have home advantage as well. I think they're going to be very competitive game. There's actually not too much in the league separating these two teams. Well, actually, I think there is a bit now, isn't it? There wasn't before, but I think this is going to end 1-1, and Gillingham are going to earn the extra point on penalties, just about edging them through to that next round over Wycombe. Colchester United versus Fulham's under-21s is also a game which is happening. Now, Colchester, basically, as long as they get a point, they're fine. They got home advantage for the next one. Fulham can't qualify for the next round either. So it's a bit of a dead rubber game. Bit irrelevant. I think Colchester just won't turn up on Fulham under-21s to win 1-0. That's as simple as it's going to be. There is some National League North games as well to go through, the last final bits. I think these are ones which, because there's some teams which did all right in the FA Cup. They're playing these ones. So yeah, Alfreton Town are hosting Spennymoor Town. We know Spennymoor decent enough to be able to make a bit of a playoff push, and I think they're going to win this one 1-0. Bedford Town versus Buxton. We have a 0-0 draw in this one. I can't quite pick a winner. Just think that manager of the month curse might cloud a bit of John McGruff's side a bit. Macclesfield is challenging Hereford and Edgar Street. Both of these are Phoenix clubs, interestingly enough. I think Macclesfield edge this one as they continue their hunt for playoffs. 2-1 to Macclesfield. Marine versus ASC Telford United, two quite mid-table teams at the moment. We'll go 2-0 to AFC Telford United in this one. Merthyr Town versus South Shields, both of them are quite decent. I think it'll be a very even, very narrow game, a 0-0 draw. Southport are taking on Chester. Southport have been poor this season. I think Chester win this one 1-0. Bath City versus Tonbridge Angels. Both of these two teams lower bottom half of the table. They're so far 2 points separating them. I think we're going to go with a 2-0 win at Bath City. Home advantage at Twerton Park might be all it takes to edge out a win here. Eastbourne Borough versus Chippenham Town, a relegation 6-pointer in the National League South. We've had a few of them already so far this video. I think Eastbourne are just too good to be relegated. Surely they were decent enough last season. So why we're in a relegation zone this season is beyond me. 4-1 to Eastbourne Borough. Do let me know if you're an Eastbourne fan. What on earth has gone on at your club? Enfield Town versus Salisbury, also a relegation 6-pointer, as they are both equal on points and just 2 goals separating these two teams. Salisbury win this, they get themselves out of relegation zone. I don't think it'll be that easy. I think it'll be a 1-1 draw in the end. Horsham versus Hampton and Richmond Borough. Bad streak of form at the moment. Hampton Richmond Borough. Horsham on a very good run of form. Got to back Horsham all the way. 3-1. Worthing versus AFC Toten. Both of these two teams on a very decent run of form. I think all even here at a 0-0 draw. Well, thank you very much for watching. Please do subscribe if you're new around here. Thanks for support as well. We're only 1 subscriber as well now off 120, I believe it is. So, or is it 130? But we're huge support recently, and I know most of it's come from the shorts. But yeah, let me know your predictions down below, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye for now.